Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bohemian National Hall. My name is Chris Harwood. I'm president of the New York chapter of SVU, the Czechoslovak Society of Arts and Sciences, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our program this evening. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of programs we'll have coming up. The slides will show. We do, of course, invite you to check us out on social media. Check out our YouTube channel, which is proudly supported by the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're going to have an event here that we are co-sponsoring on Thursday evening. This is kind of an encore performance by Professor Bedřich Feuerstein from the University of Michigan. I believe it was February 20th, 2020, one of the very last events that was held in this building before everything shut down because of COVID. And Professor Feuerstein gave a very interesting talk on the early steps towards the emancipation of Jews in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, in particular in the Czech lands. And by popular demand is going to be here on Thursday to sort of continue that narrative into the 19th century. And so this is a collaboration with our good friends, the Society for the History of Czechoslovak Jews. And so we invite you to come to that just in 2 nights. And then our next March event is going to be on Wednesday, March 22nd, the 14th already installment of the 6-Minute Challenge. This is where we invite Czechs and Slovaks and Americans of Czech and Slovak heritage that are in the New York area to come and present what they do in 6 minutes or less. And it's always fascinating. There are artists, musicians, performers, scientists, scholars, professionals, entrepreneurs, and it's always a fascinating way to get to know people in our community. So please join us for that. And other than that, as usual, I'd like to thank our principal sponsor, the Bohemian Benevolent and Literary Association, that generously supports all of our programming. So I'm very happy to welcome our speaker today, Dr. HELENA ČAPKOVÁ, who is a curator, a researcher, and professor of art history at the Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto, Japan. She studied transnational visual culture and Japanese studies in Prague and in London. As a PhD candidate, she collaborated on international and interdisciplinary research projects such as Forgotten Japonism from 2007 to 2010, and later on a project called Enchanted Modernities, Theosophy, Modernism, and the Arts, circa 1875-1960, which ran from 2013 to 2015. Since 2010, she has published and lectured extensively about the specific nature of Japanese modernism and avant-garde, which she considers an inherent part of art history traditionally perceived as Western. Her publications on this topic include Believe in Socialism, the architect Bedřich Feuerstein and his perspective on modern Japan and architecture from 2016, and Careless Shell, Transnational Exploration of Czechoslovak and Japanese Surrealism from 2015. In 2017, she designed a series of conversations about the architect Antonín Raymond at the Czech Center in Tokyo. And this successful series led to a book project, Antonín Raymond in Japan, 1948 to 1976, which she edited along with the architect Koichi Kitazawa. In 2022, Dr. ČAPKOVÁ curated an extensive exhibition on this evening's topic, Bedřich Feuerstein, architect, Prague, Paris, Tokyo, and New York, which was at the National Technical Museum in Prague. We have a couple of copies of the catalog available for sale at our table. You can get it here at a great price. And you can also look up this catalog on the online store of the National Technical Museum and order it there. And so very happy to have Dr. ČAPKOVÁ with us. This is also a kind of encore presentation because in April of 21, she was one of our early online presenters for a program that she gave on Antonín Raymond. So we're very happy to welcome her back here to tell us about Bedřich Feuerstein.
Thank you so much for lovely introduction. Let me just add that currently I'm also a visiting fellow at the Brno University of Technology, Faculty of Fine Arts. It needs to be spelled out here. So I needed to edit otherwise. Thank you so much. And thank you also the Czechoslovak Society for Arts and Sciences for inviting me to give the talk today about Bedřich Feuerstein, who was an architect, stage designer, and painter. And today I would like to introduce to you his work in all its variety. It will be designed as a kind of a tour around 4 cities that meant so much to him, where he grew as an artist. Again, I need to clarify a little bit that the exhibition that I curated only featured Prague, Paris, and Tokyo. New York is a special edition for you today because, of course, it makes sense as we are here to say, what did Bedřich Feuerstein do here in 1928? But before we start traveling, let me try to formulate maybe 3 reasons, and they are totally speculative, and there are probably many more, why Bedřich Feuerstein is a kind of marginal persona so far. And of course, we are going to change it, but so far it's probably the case. And one reason is that he's Czech. He was Czech, he was Bohemian. And this is something I will not be able to illuminate here for you why, or what can we do about this. It is simply up to us scholars to produce high quality scholarship in Czech Republic and outside about all these interesting figures that deserve to be recognized as a part of as a part of a canon of modern architecture history. So we just need to do more work, but certainly Bedřich Feuerstein, being Bohemian, being Czech, marginalizes him already. But as I'm talking about his identity, let me also tell you a little bit more about that. He was Bohemian, born into the Habsburg Empire time. His family was lower aristocracy coming from Austria, but already when Bedřich Fritzek, as he was called, was born, already settled very well in Bohemia for many generations. As everybody of the time, he was fluent in many languages, German, French, classical languages, which gave him excellent position to become what he indeed was, a cosmopolitan, dynamic individual that liked to travel, that liked to be associated with diverse groups, not only Czech, but also German. Prague, as you know at the time, I'm sure you know it from the Kafka story, was divided to German and Czech. And Bedřich Feuerstein was one of those artists who liked to associate himself with both camps, German as well as Czech. At the same time, he was, especially when we entered the history of Czechoslovakia, very much proud being Czechoslovak. He was leftist, he was socialist, he was very much committed to the new project of Czechoslovak Republic, and definitely he wanted to settle down in Czechoslovakia as well one day, which didn't really work out for him. It's the tragedy of his life. He committed suicide too early in 1936. We can see him here indeed, and there is also a bust that you can see of a woman. This is a work by Marta Jirásková. When I was curating the show, I was very happy that Bedřich Feuerstein surrounded himself with many exquisite female artists of the time. Marta Jirásková was one of them. She was amazing, excellent sculptor or sculptress. And the woman is of a special importance for us, because it's a younger sister of Bedřich Feuerstein, Anna Feuersteinová. And if she wasn't so devoted to her older brother and literally didn't throw a piece of paper that had a note of his, we couldn't do a research that we are doing today. And I will demonstrate how useful all these notebooks and little scribbles are for us, okay? So, second reason why Bedřich Feuerstein became slightly or totally or marginalized is that he was an interdisciplinary artist. He wasn't only an architect, he was, as I already said, stage designer. This is probably many of you know. Stage designs to RUR by, RUR by Karel Čapek. And I'm showing it to you in comparison with details from some of the buildings that Bedřich Feuerstein designed in Japan. I hope you can appreciate the kind of sensibility for shapes and also colors. If you could appreciate the color, we have only black and white photographs for the interwar period buildings. But what is significant here is that already when Bedřich Feuerstein was alive, this kind of multi-professionalism that he exercised was working against him. There was lots of people who said, who is he? You know, he's doing architecture, but he's also doing stage design. He can't do both things in the same excellent fashion. It's not to be done. You know, so it was kind of working against him, even though already people realized how excellent his work was, and his stage design were memorable. I will show it to you later, as well as the architecture. And this kind of continued on, and only recently, I think, we are realizing methodologically also that interdisciplinarity and is very useful, very important quality, and that we need to kind of look at individuals through the lens to get somewhere, to really understand their work. So hopefully with this new course of methodology and research, we will appreciate people like Feuerstein, but it is quite a recent trend. To categorize people to different brackets has been a tradition indeed. And lastly, and this is a very common problem, it's nothing exclusive or kind of, it's not rare, is the fact that indeed the work of Bedřich Feuerstein, especially his mature years when he was working for Perret and for Raymond, became kind of dispersed within the work of a larger studio. That's, of course, common practice. It's totally normal, of course, as well. That doesn't mean, however, that we still can and maybe should, and we have evidence often for identifying projects that these individuals, such as Feuerstein, were leading, were actually designing, and we can kind of attribute these buildings to these individuals. So now we are looking as a really, probably the most important building of Feuerstein's life that is traditionally attributed to Antonín Raymond and some other architects. It is very important building architecturally as well as culturally. And it is a building of St. Luke's Hospital in Tsukiji in Tokyo, still standing today, still being a hospital as well. We will be talking about it later. So these are, I think, three kind of questions, and maybe the two, the second and third, we can illuminate a little bit in this talk. But now let's travel. So Prague. Prague, of course, is an important place for Bedřich. He became architect there. But as I warned you already, this talk is not about was born and died. It really is about the places. So let's jump straight into the projects. And Feuerstein graduated from the Czech Technical University, and already as a young architect, he started making waves, so to speak. He became recognized as a talent. And two projects in particular gained him this recognition, and this is one of them, the Rieger's burial mound in Kozákov. This is how the project is commonly known. And I hope you can appreciate this is really fascinating shape. It is fascinating design. And thanks to Anna Feuersteinová, we can actually figure out quite well how Feuerstein came to this amazing shape. And it may be surprising that he didn't come to it by experimenting and kind of composing different shapes, maybe influenced by Czech architectural cubism that some people like to say. I kind of strongly disagree with that. And these notes support my suspicions, because I hope you can see it. I appreciate the quality is quite bad, and this is going to be the case for many images that you will see today. This is kind of also, these are archival materials, so please bear with me. But maybe you can see that really when you look at the top left there, Feuerstein starts from three simple kind of towers, triangular shapes, it seems like, from the sketches. And he's working with them, and how he is kind of composing them. The tops are getting closer. He's, in various ways, he modifies them. Ultimately, he makes the shapes, he cuts the top, and eventually he arrives to what we saw already. Yeah. So because we have the sketches, we can reconstruct this, the evolution of this important project, but also we can see that Feuerstein really was grounded, was fascinated by ancient, classical, the architecture of antiquity, and he was using it. He economized these shapes, and he was using it to come up with modern expression. This was really his quest, and he said it himself. He wanted to come up with something at most simple, beautiful, and modern. This was a kind of quest for him. Another project that gave him recognition was this one on the left. It is a crematorium in Pardubice. He got an award. He didn't win this competition. I'm sure many of you know who was the winner and who built the actual crematorium in Pardubice. But again, this design was published everywhere and promoted Feuerstein talent. Feuerstein was quite obsessed with kind of dignified pathos, cult of death even, we can say it like that. He wanted to find modern expression for all these values, and also he was fascinated by the discussion about cremation, which maybe I even can't go to any detail. We don't have enough time. It's only 45 minutes, don't worry. Yeah? But it was a fascinating debate, not only among architects, but other social theorists and others. And there was also resistance from Christian, primarily Catholic Church in Czechoslovakia. So finding an appropriate architecture for crematorium was a challenge, and few architects were successful, including Feuerstein. So the first actual building that Feuerstein builds, this is not in Prague, but in Nymburk, not far from Prague, is the Nymburk crematorium that we are looking at. Amazing building that you can maybe appreciate it by looking at the photograph on the right. When you look at the proportion, the scale between the car and the building, it's rather small. Yeah, it's a kind of small scale building, but the way it's designed really gives it that monumentality, that feeling that one appreciates when you are going to part with somebody important in your life. Indeed, we have quite a lot of drawings for this and photographs as well. Right. But again, still being in Prague, important chapter for Bedřich Feuerstein, as for many young men of his generation, is the First World War, but not going to detail there at all. We are focusing on the work. At the end of the war, he became associated with Czechoslovak legions. He befriended the general who is mentioned in the quote, Rudolf Medek, and he worked for Medek's project of a museum. He did some exhibitions, and also he was commissioned to design, and this was a very important project, a new uniform. It is quite shocking to me that this is literally the only blouse and belt that we found from that design. Yeah. Don't ask me, I really can't comprehend, but at least we found this, and definitely this was something that was a great challenge. And also it points out to the fact that Bedřich Feuerstein was quite fascinated by clothing, by fashion. He saw it in relation, again, with the other things he was doing, with design, with architecture, with stage design. And The military engagement, that was very short. He worked really only for a year for MEDEC, really. But during that time, he was commissioned to design this building, the Military Cartographic Institute. It didn't go exactly according to his visions. Again, this is very normal. I think there are architects here, almost, that's common thing. But again, this building was realized, it's still standing in Prague, and like the crematorium in Nymburk, it's still serving its initial purpose. And I understand this as a great success when, as an architect, you design something and it really stays and it works, well, until today and probably to the future as well. You can see the color image there. This is a stage design. It's a really backdrop from for the Molière's Imaginary Invalid. I inserted it because maybe you can appreciate there are other photographs from the courtyard of the Military Cartographic Institute that really link the stage design with this architecture. This is the case for many different projects, and it really shows how interconnected Feuerstein's work indeed is. Right, but moving on from military, those of you who've heard about Feuerstein, probably you've heard about him as a member of Devět sil, as a member of Czech or Czechoslovak avant-garde, which he indeed was, although not for that long time. Again, there was, as always, among avant-garde movements, you had big quarrels and people parted very quickly, and that was the case for Feuerstein. But what I'm showing you here is a very important piece of cover design. It's probably in every book about Czech design. And it is associated, it is also analyzed as an example of Czech purism. After all, also the Nymburk crematorium is often seen as an example of Czech purism. For that matter, also, Nymburk crematorium is often called the first modern architecture in Czechoslovak Republic or Czech Republic. So purism and Feuerstein do go hand in hand. It makes sense. As I told you already, as a young man, he was kind of trying to modify the classical for modern time. It was a topic that resonated with him. So the ideas of Le Corbusier indeed resonated as well. What we have here, though, on the left, another very badly readable scribble is what we found in the archive, and it is a sketch for this cover. And hopefully it kind of points out a little bit to the fact that although this building is always, a big collective achievement, we have even more names sometimes, who designed this cover, hopefully we can say that Feuerstein had some sort of leading or kind of, let's say leading role in this important design. And when talking about Prague, we must talk about the stage designs as well. There are so many. Let me just show you a few. This is Bohuslav Martinus Istar, kind of vaguely, oriental topic. This also is interesting when we are thinking about Bedřich Feuerstein, Japanese episode later on. Martinu as well, a good friend of Feuerstein and important figure for him. I will show you his photograph later. We already seen, beautiful. Another memorable stage design is the Marlowe's Eduard II. This stage design in particular, according to Anna Masaryková, who was an art historian, very well known, surely everybody heard about her here in the audience. Also a person who devoted great energy to conserve, look after, and promote Bedřich Feuerstein in the post-war period. She, in particular, noted that this stage design was a topic. Everybody who's seen the play was talking about it. It was something extraordinary. And the stage design is today still studied because they say that this is the first time when architecture as a monument, as a sculpture, located in the center of the stage, is used by the director as a part of the play. So it's quite a revolutionary modification from a more standard, still vaguely Baroque type theater right, space to something quite different. Yeah? So Feuerstein's revolutionary role in stage design is very well, I think, researched or confirmed. The problem is that the stage design studies and architecture history are somewhat separated, and that's the problem. Yeah? Feuerstein goes on designing stage designs in the 30s as well. So just to give you an example here, of course, it has different feel. The arts changed dramatically in that 10-year period, as we all know. The 30s is also a time for collaboration with the liberated theater, which in the context of Czechoslovak avant-garde is very significant. But lastly, this is my last slide for Prague, Feuerstein also works in design, proper design, product design. He designs objects, he designs furniture, and also posters, book covers. This is another nice example, I think, when Anna Feuersteinová and her notebooks are giving us exciting insight of how Feuerstein arrives to this almost final poster sketch. You can see we have the automobile at the beginning, which kind of disappears, and other ideas took for, and this fantastic design is at the end. Poster exists, it was printed and used. Right, so Paris. Paris is another home, second home for Feuerstein for definitely this first half of 1920s. He has many friends there. It's funny. At the beginning, the friends are exciting. He's like, great, Josef Šíma Pepík, very famous, of course, Czech painter, introduces Feuerstein to everybody. Both Martinu is there also. Gradually, however, as Feuerstein settles in Paris, he's like, there are so many Czechs here. I don't meet a French person anymore. It's impossible. So that's how things usually go, isn't it? But with Pepík, they travel to south of France, and Feuerstein creates probably the most exciting series of his free work, of his watercolors primarily. This is an example. This one is in National Gallery in Prague. This one is in private collection. We have quite a few more, and they are fantastic, and they are also exciting comparative material. Again, if you want to use Feuerstein style, let's say, or Feuerstein understanding, sensibility for color and shape, in kind of looking at the larger projects maybe created under Antonín Raymond. But painting and going to Hendai and Biarritz, it's of course not all Feuerstein was doing in France. He was associating himself with theater. That was already very much what he wanted to do. I showed you the contemporary famous stage design. Maybe I should say that especially a few of them, definitely, the RUR became internationally famous. And when Feuerstein relocates to Japan, this is what people really know about him. They saw somewhere printed these stage designs. So he already has, in this period, kind of certain international reputation. And one of the collaborations he did in Paris was a collaboration with Ballet Suédois, and we have many sketches, and the result for all these sketching and work is this poster that I'm showing to you here. And very significantly, Bedřich Feuerstein works for Auguste Perret for about 2 years. He is inspired, he enjoys the work more or less. Of course, what he doesn't enjoy is pay. It's just very low or almost none. And it changes, it depends on the project, but certainly he is greatly inspired, and they seem to have a very nice relationship. What I'm showing you here is a kind of task that Feuerstein got from Perret. This was never realized, even wasn't meant to be realized, but as a kind of exercise, Feuerstein was to design a skyscraper. So you can maybe compare it if you know Perret's project, how different and how similar this project is. And then we know that he worked on a number of other projects as a draftsman, also as a designer. So an example here is Madagascar's church in Tananarive. And main project for Perret, however, is this one. And this is the very well-known temporary theater for the Art Deco exhibition of 1925. And Feuerstein was the leading person for the project, for its design, also for its realization. And he particularly enjoyed the idea of three-parted or three-axis stage that I'm showing you here. There's so much more to say. Maybe I will leave that for some other time. But what I would like to point out to you is the damage, damage on these photographs. This is because Bedřich Feuerstein archive was, as many other parts of the National Technical Museum collections, where the biggest archive of this artist is damaged by the floods. So this is the kind of memory, or this is the trace of that damage. But I quite like it, actually. I think it's a part of history we still can appreciate quite a lot from these. Right, so moving to Tokyo, in 1925, another crossroad for Feuerstein. He was offered to teach at the university in Czechoslovakia, but he chose otherwise. He chose to follow Antonín Raymond to Tokyo, and he was promised to become eventually a partner in the company, which never happened. It was kind of a major point of conflict, really, or tension between Antonín Raymond and Bedřich Feuerstein. Here you can see them. Yeah, so slightly bold. Antonín Raymond, and on the right we have Bedřich Feuerstein, kind of weirdly alerted, on the other hand. And this is a detail from a party picture. Important man there in kimono, kind of above Raymond, Okada Tadaichi, very strange figure, diplomat, Russophile, leftist, but also great supporter of Feuerstein. And let me tell you what he did for him in a second. But certainly, Feuerstein works and designs many different projects for Raymond. This one is particularly interesting. It is the Russian or Soviet embassy built in Tokyo, which the commentators in Japanese architecture press called as a very good expression of Soviet spirit, whatever that was. But this is a garden facade, it's a very elegant villa. Again, I think we can see many other influences, maybe even Perret there. Sadly, this was demolished, no more it exists. And this is a publication that was sponsored and published by this Okada Tadaichi that I mentioned to you. It is a very thin kind of a brochure about Bedřich Feuerstein's stage design, and it's about him. We can find his biography, but actually they are not only stage designs, they are also his paintings like the one above, which we can find in the National, Gallery in Prague collections. Well, and these activities, such as publishing about his work and also working with local architects independently on Raymond, again, contributed to the ultimate kind of parting of the two architects. I would like to say, though, that that collaboration really started very enthusiastically and very positively. Unfortunately, over the 4 years, it all changed. And yes, the collaboration with Tsuchiura Kameki and Tsuchiura Nobuko, two married couple, two architects, was productive, although this is one competition they did together. This is the other one. They didn't win, so that's why I'm saying productive, but maybe not that necessarily fortunate, let's say, but certainly existed, and it had potential. And Feuerstein definitely was considering to continue working with them and to establishing himself more in Japan. Yes, he was having a very rich social life, as he always done. This is another stereotype that we often find about Bedřich Feuerstein, that he was sort of somber and kind of fragile and so on. But he was actually really quite an exuberant social character who liked to dance and party, and he wanted to get married all the time. That also didn't work out for him. But this is a photograph from a kind of hotspot for parties, really, as well as many other social cultural activities, the Imperial Hotel, where we can see Feuerstein and again Okada Tadaichi and others. And theater also didn't leave Feuerstein in Japan. This is a photograph from our exhibition, but why I'm showing it, this particular one to you, is that we have a few No masks that Bedřich Feuerstein collected, and he was very much into No theater, the traditional theater of Japan. He also saw other theaters, kabuki, etc. But No in particular resonated with him. And this is rather lovely quote from his essay. I should say that upon his arrival back to Czechoslovakia in 1930, Bedřich Feuerstein was one of those people who, many of them became like that when they came back from Japan. They were completely full of it. They would tell about Japan to everybody. They were lecturing about it constantly, sort of infected by Japan. And this was a case of Feuerstein, and he gave many lectures on variety of topics, including No theater. And maybe the last sentence is very nice, isn't it? It is like a meal, beautiful, but devoid of all the vulgarities of taste, which is consumed with the eyes, and thus its taste must be imagined. So that's how it is. And Japan definitely had impact on Feuerstein artistically, architecturally. There would be few examples that I could show you, but maybe this stage design for the Asia play, Asia, especially we have many stage designs, but we don't have many photographs for the actual play. But the one that you see there, you can appreciate maybe the kind of floor lifestyle that Feuerstein transported there to the play. Okay, so lastly, New York. I'm really fast. Maybe I could speak a little slower. I can see that I still have some time. Okay, New York. Okay, so for New York and for the American visit, we actually don't have that much information, but we have something. And there will be a slide full of information, so you can read as well in your own pace. But the trip happened in 1928, and it was all sponsored really and associated with this key project that I already mentioned to you at the beginning, the St. Luke's International Hospital that was being built in Tokyo. It was a kind of nightmare project, really, that took a very long time to materialize. It was led by Rudolf Bolling-Teusler, that it's written in the very top corner there on the left, who was a medical doctor. He was of German descent, American, who really was determined to make it happen that in Tokyo there must be this modern hospital of American type that will fight all the diseases, the infectious diseases in particular. And it has taken him a very long time, especially because it was all dependent on fundraising in America especially. And when he found Raymond, this was very interesting, the Raymond office received this project based on Teusler's connection with Czechoslovak Legion in the First World War. So Raymond gets the contract, and starts building even. The foundations are already finished, and then the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 happens. and all can start again, right? So that indeed happens. Teusler needs to fundraise again. He again asks Raymond, and he starts designing new building, and then Feuerstein comes. And kind of unfortunately for Raymond, the two, Teusler and Feuerstein, really became very good friends, and they collaborated well together, and Raymond became a little sideline. That didn't bother him that much, but it's true that as soon as he let Feuerstein go, he lost this project. So that wasn't very good for him. But as you are already reading this slide, the Feuerstein trip to America was quite pragmatic. It was really to invite a bright architect who can very quickly kind of walk around all the major companies in New York and other cities, as you can see, consult with them, show them plans, and basically save lots of money to the missions, yeah, because as you can say, they didn't have money to pay for all this consultancy, so this was a way how to kind of do many jobs at once, and indeed, Feuerstein was picked for the job. So this is what he was doing here in New York, as well as in these other places. He was also meeting people. Raymond, for example, asked him to contact Frank Lloyd Wright. He also met other friends, like in California. He met this fascinating woman, Zdeňka Faustková-Wattersonová, very big promoter of car driving for women, for example, emancipated lady, who wrote down this interesting exchange between her and Feuerstein, and she also wrote a very touching and beautiful obituary for Feuerstein when he died. Lastly, this is what you can see on the right down there. This is a kind of little cheeky remark by Teusler, where you can see that Feuerstein, being maybe slightly naive, this is interesting, also to kind of attempt, it's impossible of course, but attempt to reconstruct Feuerstein character. There was certain naivete to him, and this exchange with the Archbishop of Tokyo called Chambon, we have his business card in Feuerstein archive as well, when he is showing the plans, which probably he shouldn't have done, to the Catholics, and because they also would like to have, of course, competitive project. And you can see how Teusler is very dismissive of that even possibility that Catholic Church would be even capable of such an enterprise, of building such a project. Well, he well knew what he was talking about after attempting to build a project for maybe more than 20 years. Yes, so this is the connection between Bedřich Feuerstein and New York, really. And ending my talk probably here with the beautiful rendering of the building, which is signed by Bedřich Feuerstein, which is also in his archive. I would like to thank you, and I hope we will have many questions.
Dr. Čapko, thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. It really was the grand tour, and I think it's laid out just really elegantly the diversity of Feuerstein's work. So I bet there are lots of questions from people who have a lot of different interests in the audience. So I'm going to jump in and say, can you say just a little bit about some of his interactions with other members of the interwar avant-garde in Czechoslovakia, who he collaborated with more closely, who he might have had conflicts with, and that led him to leave the group or whatever?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, so the more intensive engagement with Czechoslovak avant-garde happens in this early 1920s. And what is seen as a problem, especially by the group, especially the Tiger group, that Feuerstein was engaged and was interacting quite closely. He still, even later on, expresses quite a lot of admiration for Tiger. But he becomes very quickly an outsider, yeah, which is kind of unfair perhaps, but it is true that it is not being an outsider only physically, which also happened. Feuerstein simply wasn't around much from certain point on. But what also happened was that they drifted apart politically. So more and more, although Feuerstein was interested, committed to certain types of lefticism, he also had for quite a long time great interest and admiration in the Soviet. He even kept a certain optimism until a certain time. It's true that he more and more inclined to kind of a French variant of lefticism, and that wasn't appreciated by the Tiger Group. So that's how they kind of, not even slowly, kind of they drifted. And the engagement therefore kind of ended also as a result. But he would be keeping ties with some painters, definitely architects. We can map this very well because fortunately we have quite a lot of correspondence. Again, Anna Feuersteinová and her meticulous archivership. And there are few correspondences in particular, especially with architect Josef Havlíček, who was slightly younger, a great friend of Bedřich Feuerstein, where they talk a lot about who to contact, what's going on, they are very critical. I think some people wouldn't like to read these letters, really. But that's the nature also of the friendship they had.
Much. Some other questions here, Martin.
Just a marginal comment. What caught my attention was that when he was in the United States, he visited New York, Washington, Cleveland, Los Angeles, and Honolulu. We are talking about a time when going from New York to Los Angeles meant at least 3 days on the train. Yeah. And it was expensive, you know. Regular folks didn't travel from Europe. So I just wonder if you have any idea, how did this happen? How did he pay for it? Yeah. How did he find the time and money to do that? Yeah. That's my question.
Yeah, thank you. It was financed by the missions, by the American mission and by Deusler. I'm sure they did the math and they figured that this is cheaper still than if they had to commission all these companies. Time was a problem. Yeah, it's true that Feuerstein did kind of miss quite a lot in Raymond's office, and Raymond wasn't happy about it. So he actually did then used it also as a comment, negative comment, when he was parting with Feuerstein, that all this time was lost and he was still with him, and it wasn't appropriate, etc. So yeah, definitely Raymond wasn't happy about this trip, but still Feuerstein went.
No, I have two questions. I have many, but one is you've mentioned the correspondence of Feuerstein. Besides letters, did he made any written statements, manifestos, declarations, critical articles? So this is my first question. Is there a corpus of writings beyond correspondence? The second is asking you to say a little more about St. Luke's Hospital, which, when we look at this elevation, is an interesting collage with a tower which is completely derived from Perret's churches in Laurency or Montmagny, or the one Feuerstein made drawings of in the office, and the base is a more sturdier American hospital. So going to the US to see modern hospitals, in particular modern vertical hospitals, which were the new, which were replacing the hospitals with decentralized plans, was a common practice in Europe at that time. What did he bring from the US to the design of St. Luke's in this collage of Perret meets the US.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. I will start with St. Luke as we are looking at it. And what needs to be said, and again, we are lucky that this is quite well documented because the Episcopalians, although American Mission was a mix of many different brands, let's say, in this archive we have correspondences between Teusler and other agents of the missions. And what is very clear is that this, as you said, collage or, of a building was a massive and long and quite painful negotiation. Yeah, everybody wanted something. Raymond, if I showed you his versions, we have quite a few. They, always there was something wrong. Yeah, especially what was a basic, because otherwise, like they needed this wing there and this wing there, and this was for infectious patient, it had to a certain parameters. So they negotiated there definitely that to be that the most modern type was important, but equally there were all these kind of quite conservative requests, like having all sorts of neo-Renaissance, something or the other place somewhere. Nobody wanted that, of course, among the architects. So thankfully that kind of disappeared eventually. But what was very important, and with Feuerstein that was resolved, and it was resolved in the format using Perret mode, was the significance and the visibility of the chapel. Because the fact that it will be probably in the center somewhere was clear from the beginning, but Raymond kept kind of putting it backward somewhere, making it in the very unappealing building. And the mission didn't like it at all. And fortunately, they were very happy that Feuerstein finally understood what they wanted. And he designed it in this way. So the Perret Tower sits the crossing and the chapel goes behind. And we have, I don't have it here in this presentation, we only have this one design of the back facade, which is really it is the ending of the chapel, which is rather interesting. Unfortunately, this was not realized. Yes, so this hybrid quality of the building is certainly a result of this long-standing big fight, and the solution was found like that. There was also an imperative. This tower, unfortunately, it was a little bit lowered later on, was the tallest in the area. Yeah, so it was very important for the missions that they have this tallest building. It is a chapel. It's a massive cross. Yeah, there is massive cross. It was golden. So really clear message that this is a hospital, it's missionary, it's Christian, and it provides all sorts of services, including the missionary one. So yes, fascinating, very complicated project, this one. And the writing and correspondence, yes, there are interesting articles on variety of subjects, also quite kind of theoretical one, nature of art, for example. Unfortunately, they are quite, they are written quite early on. Yeah, so I would even classify them as like juvenile. Yeah, but they are writings like that. They were published also. We don't really have anything that would remain unpublished. A few fragments, but all the finalized manuscripts were also published at some point. What is also very helpful, we have a few versions of Bedřich Feuerstein's own CV, which is always good to have, what the architect considers to put in there.
The letters, correspondence of Wright, which I edited, unfortunately showed no contact between Wright and Feuerstein around 1928. But as I just mentioned, I think the wound between Wright and Raymond probably healed enough that Raymond was comfortable to recommend Feuerstein contact Wright, who was just beginning to emerge from the doldrums of his life and spending a great deal of time in New York, particularly in 28. So it was a logical connection. And Wright had already been very much au courant among the Czechs from the first small publication of Vilny Šmery in 1907.
Thank you for the fascinating talk. My question is about, and forgive me if I missed that because I missed the first 10 minutes of your talk. So if you could talk a little bit about Feuerstein's relationship with the Czechoslovak government in the interwar period, whether there was any such thing. Did the government discover him, try to exploit his art, or use him in any way abroad? Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, with the government, I think the only clear, successful project would be the military, the uniform they showed. Otherwise, Feuerstein was very close with the Masaryk's family. He was a part of circles around, especially the children, Jan Masaryk, I already mentioned also Anna Masaryková. But in terms of projects, unfortunately, there was no more of that. Another members of this circle were the Voskovec family or the Wachsman family that I showed. Maybe I can go back actually. The Liberated Theatre. Here you can see Jiří Voskovec on the cover of this program. And for them, Feuerstein not only created a number of stage designs, etc., but he also participated in the design of their summer villa, which is probably the last project of his. And it was quite difficult to actually, for me to claim that he collaborated on it. But I saw recently some material that I think he did. But anyway.
I have only a question about the time you mentioned Masaryk and Voskovec, and also very important was there Josef Plečnik in Prague. So any connection, any influence, anything can you mention? Do you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Again, this is something from many things I didn't mention, but it's that often comes up that definitely Josef Plečnik had a major influence on Feuerstein, who did take informally his classes because he was, after all, studying at the Czech Technical University, but he would be visiting the courses taught by Plečnik. And hopefully from what I was telling you, the fascination by this kind of ancient, not even antiquity or the Greco-Roman architecture, but even older structures, and kind of searching for the ways how to make them relevant for 1910s or 1920s is something that certainly resonated, and certainly Plečnik somewhat maybe foster it or shape that interest in Feuerstein. I think that's first thing to say. What, however, is kind of controversial is that what often appears on the internet, especially, is that Feuerstein was a student of Jan Kotěra. This is probably a lie. Yeah, so watch out. It's not true. Yeah. No evidence for it. Yeah.
Maybe it's not so relevant to the topic, but is there known what brought Feuerstein to commit suicide? What is said, why it is said, or what is the official version, what his sister said, what his friend said, and if there is any real known reason, if it's possible to question something like that.
Right. Yeah. I knew that will come up. Yeah. Okay. Suicide, but it is part of Bedřich Feuerstein's story. I think if you've asked the sister or the friends, they were not surprised. This was a very long process. Bedřich Feuerstein was ill for a very long time. few years, and he was incredibly frustrated because although he was medicated quite heavily, and he stayed in different sanatoria, nothing really was helping. He still also, and that apparently was getting worse, would have a few kind of wounds, things that happened already in the First World War. Like his face would be kind of stiffened. There was some neurological problem. He suffered from tinnitus as well. So all sorts of things like that. Then plus his career was not going exactly as he wanted to. He gradually also sort of gave up. We have a number of comments to that fact from his friends who, in this kind of mid-1935, or even already 34, were trying to give him even small jobs, interiors, etc. And Feuerstein didn't want to do it, and they were really upset about it, And Feuerstein would say things, I was meant to build big projects, hospitals, theaters. I told you, socialist, so he always was interested in building large buildings for betrifying society in general. So he sort of gave up, became depressed. I was quite lucky that when I gave a small talk many years ago, maybe many of you are researchers here, it happened to you as well. Suddenly this woman comes and she said, I have something for you. And I was like, that's great. And she gave me these letters, and it turned out there is also the last letter of Bedřich Feuerstein. We show this note in our exhibition also. You can find it in the catalog. And this note demonstrates, and it's a testimony to a many days process when Bedřich Feuerstein basically couldn't sleep at all. He would be walking during nights with the father of the lady who gave me the letters. And they would do it every day. Basically, they would set off. In the evening, they would walk around Prague, and in the morning, they would part. And one day, this Jaromír Čihář said to Fritzek, I'm sorry, Fritzek, I'm so tired. I need to work, and I'm not going with you today. And allegedly, this was the day when Fritzek jumped. Yeah. What is tragic also about this is that not only he was still quite young, but he was almost immediately spotted. And if his body wasn't as destroyed by all these medical treatments that he did, the heart was apparently very damaged, he would have probably survived. Yeah, it was such a quick action of the fisherman or whatnot. But it didn't happen, and Bedřich Feuerstein dies a few hours later. So that's the story.
Anyone else? All right, well, I would like to give a big thank you to our speaker, Dr. Čapková. Thank you so much.
Thank you.